Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where Destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy! Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast. My name is Ben Lawhorn, and I am joined as always by Tyler Beck and Matthew Weiler. For those new to the show, welcome to the Movie Club. For those returning, welcome back to the Movie Club. We are so happy to have you here. You can find us everywhere online at Three Films Pod. So tell your friends, your enemies, your lovers, everyone. We appreciate the support and the involvement. And yeah, you can go to threefilmspod.com as well. We have some awesome merch there that Matt has designed and our Patreon. So thank you so much for all of our patrons for our support. We're just wrapping up a month that was actually nominated by one of our patrons. So this has been kind of fun, but we are joined today by the most special of guests to me, the Dr. Frankenstein to my creature. We have here my dad, Leo Lawhorn. Dad, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to the pod. We finally got you on season 3. I'm stoked you're here. We're talking about one of your favorites. So thank you so much for joining us.
Leo.
My very favorite. I'm so excited to be here. Finally.
It's about time.
I know. 3rd season. I can't believe it.
I know.
Actually, this was supposed to be part of the 1st season, but then wimped out or something. I don't remember. But I'm very excited to be here. I was telling everybody I had to be here because we had to see where Ben got his good looks, you know?
That's right. Exactly.
Anyway, I should have saved that for, not said that earlier, but I'm very glad to be here.
I'm super excited to have you here.
Yeah, same.
Your mom's not going to see this, right? Never mind.
I mean, I don't think she's seen any of them, so maybe she won't start here. Who knows?
Lauren, if you're listening, like and subscribe.
Please, Mom, please. I've been asking for years now.
Yeah, this is truly one of my favorite movies of all time, so I'm very excited to be here.
Cool. Yeah.
Likewise.
I can't wait. This is going to be fun. I think let's get on with the movie that we're all here to talk about. Season 3, as we talked about, is here. We just wrapped up our round of movies so bad they're scary, which was submitted by one of our patrons, Andrew Pedersen. And now we're on to our first little pod of the season, which I'm excited about. We usually try to switch it up with these. We've done movie drafts in the past, emergency recast, some auction drafts, things like that. But I think, we're kind of going the opposite way of this last round because this movie was so good. It's fantastic. Where you're talking about Young Frankenstein, the Mel Brooks classic starring Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, Marty Feldman, Peter Boyle, Cloris Leachman, and Terry Garr, and an awesome little cameo from Gene Hackman, which just gets me every time. I love it so much.
I was about to make espresso.
So good. Just their chemistry is fantastic. So, I mean, quite the cast. A really great movie. One of my first Mel Brooks, without a doubt, which we will get into later. But yeah, Dad, I know you said this was one of your favorite movies of all time. I remember you telling me that, when I was younger, got you a big old coffee table book just on the movie, which was awesome to look through and read. So I know when you told me about it, I think that's when I checked it out for the first time. I don't think I had ever seen it or really even heard about it before you told me. So I saw it and I loved it. I thought it was great. But I want to hear your first experience with this movie. Like, what was it that made you fall in love with it? Did you fall in love with it right away, or did it have to grow on you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the movie and your first experience with it.
I actually saw it because I loved the producers. I didn't see it in the theaters. I'd seen that on TV. In February of 1974, Blazing Saddles had come out. And that was Mel Brooks' first, I think, huge hit. I don't remember how big. I was too young to see the producers in the theater or to remember that. But 1974, Blazing Saddles was hilarious. And honestly, they couldn't make that movie today as they made it then. Really, everyone is so touchy now that they couldn't. But that movie was brilliant. And I'm laughing now just thinking about some of this stuff. But then that same year in December, Young Frankenstein came out. So I really wanted to get my dad to see this Mel Brooks because he loved comedy just as much as I did. And, you know, my dad was in many ways my best friend growing up. Truly my best friend. I could talk to him about anything. And I really wanted to get him to go. And he just was like, comedy. It's like, you know, it was December. He was like, comedy. I don't, you know, and finally I hit upon what would get him to go. I said, Gene Hackman is in it.
Oh, nice.
Hackman? Gene Hackman's in it. Oh, okay.
Nice.
You know, he just won the Oscar a couple of years before for The French Connection. And my dad loved Gene Hackman. I said, yeah Gene Hackman's in it. He said, okay, we'll go. And we went to this movie theater and we're watching the movie. And have you guys all seen the film now? Right?
Yeah. Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And you start roaring from the beginning. I mean, I've always loved Madeline Kahn. To me, she's one of the most brilliant comedians we've ever had.
I'm yours, all of me. What else can I say?
My sweet love.
The hair. Just been said.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Her timing and all that. And I knew she had been studied opera in college, and that was what her degree was in. She was an opera singer. So when she does the big opera singing at the end, it was hilarious. I'm not going to give too much away, but we hope everybody that's seeing this has seen the film. If they haven't, I don't want to give too much away. But, you know, and Kenneth Mars was brilliant in that too. I keep thinking of the playing darts, you know.
Oh, yeah. That character's so good.
It was just, everybody was brilliant in that. But so we're watching the movie and it was New Year's Eve. And there was this drunk guy in the theater. He was literally falling over the seats, laughing so hard. So we were laughing at the movie, but we were laughing at him.
That's awesome.
We could not breathe because the movie was so funny. We were laughing so hard that we had to go back 2 weeks later to see the movie to really enjoy the movie.
Just
and make sure that it was as much fun. Yeah. It was, you know, it's one of those magic nights where just everybody in the theater was laughing and we were all laughing so hard. Part of it was that drunk guy that was making us laugh. It was also the film that was so tightened down that every little nuance was there. You know, the rolling the hay, you know, all that stuff. You know, I had a really good friend that he and I could watch it on CDs or videotape. And we would just throw the lines at each other all through the movie.
Yeah.
We were those people, the ones you hate to invite over to watch a movie because we're laughing before the thing hit, you know, the line hit. But that was a memorable night.
Man, I mean, we just talked about him, but I didn't realize these both came out in the same year. And,
they did.
You know, I mean, that immediately makes me think of Spielberg with Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, like two very different films, you know, than these two that both came out in 93. But it's like, how often do directors put out arguably two of their best films ever in the same year, let alone just two films in a year? But I mean, to put out Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, like that's crazy that was in the same calendar year. That's amazing. Yeah, those are, I mean, arguably his two best movies. But
there's something about a movie like this that is funny, like this movie, and seeing it in a crowd like that, and just the snowball effect of the laughter. I remember the experience I had like that was seeing Borat. I mean, wildly different movie than Young Frankenstein, but I don't know that I've ever been amongst a group of people that were laughing that hard and that consistently than with Borat. And part of it was just because of you're feeding off the rest of the crowd. Like, things are funny, but then, you know, if someone else in the theater has a funny laugh or a drunk guy falls over the seat, and it just is like this contagious, infectious thing that happens to everyone. It's really cool. It's really beautiful. I haven't had a moment like that in a while. Mostly due to not being in theaters as much recently, but it's really cool. So anyone that's listened to the podcast for any length of time has probably heard me talk about my grandfather at some point. And sort of like you had an experience with your father, Leo. My grandfather was the one that showed me a lot of these movies. This one in particular, The Three Amigos. You know, he let me watch Batman, like those sorts. Like, he was the one that was like showing me movies. And I remember I was at his house one day and I said something along the lines of, oh, this just couldn't get any worse, or at least it couldn't get worse than this, or something along those lines. And he said, have you ever seen Young Frankenstein? And I didn't know what he was talking about. And so he's like, you got to watch this movie right now. And so he and I sat down that afternoon. I think I was pretty young. He was babysitting me. That was my introduction to Young Frankenstein. And ever since then, it's been sort of like my touchstone for humor and for comedy, right?
Yeah.
Like this movie and movies of its ilk, like have really shaped, especially my sense of humor and the way that I think of movies and comedy. And it's a lot to do with his influence and this movie in particular. So this movie's also been really special to me for a very long time, both because it's a great and really hilarious movie and because of my connection to it through my grandfather. And I've wanted to get it on the podcast forever. And when Ben said that you really loved it and you wanted to come on, that made me so happy, just because I love the idea of it being a connection for me and my family, and for you and your son and your father. I think it's really beautiful. And I think I don't know, it's just one thing that I'm so grateful for this podcast and this little movie club community, and for Matt and Ben and all of our guests that come on, like Leo, like all of this stuff is just so wildly important to me and so much fun. And I just love hearing your experience, living it vicariously through you, Leo. It's just, I don't know. It's a really cool thing to share with everyone, but I've loved this movie for a very long time, and it still holds up. I watched it this afternoon after work, and it's fun to watch it now, a little bit older, and different things are funny now. You know what I mean? Like you pick up on different things, and I think it just speaks to the type of, the craftsmanship of it, and how much these people, you really get a sense of how much they enjoyed making this movie. And everything I've read about it, most people that worked on the movie, it's one of their favorite movies they've ever done. And I think it really shows through. And I think maybe that's the reason it connects so well, is because it's just so much fun. And everyone seems like they're having fun. Everyone's in on the joke. And it's just, I don't know, it's really cool. I'm really glad we're here talking about it.
I think it's probably a different kind of setup or whatever, but watching these movies like Blazing Saddles and stuff, it makes me think it's kind of the modern versions of like these Adam McKay, Will Ferrell movies. I get that with the Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder, where it's like you have two great comedic minds who are probably rewriting some stuff in the moment. It's like, oh, let's try this, let's do that. It's just like these sets just must have been great, to be on. And
oh my gosh,
I mean, I think this could turn into a quote along, which it kind of was when I saw it like most recently, because Broovies, one of our theaters here, was playing it for free a couple of weeks ago. So we went there for like a Sunday brunch and watched it. And it was like, it was one of those good moments where people could, go along with the joke, or, yell it out as it happened, like even though it wasn't the kind of setup that it was, it's just that anyone that's here at noon on Sunday to watch Young Frankenstein is here to watch this movie. No one's like, oh, let's check it out for the first time. So it was really cool to like be in there with this theater full of people who love this movie and want to check it out. And it was just such a great experience. And these theater experiences, like you mentioned Borat. I mean, just so happens Andrew, again, who nominated this last month of the rounds, he and I saw Borat together. And I honestly think we were alone. Like we must have seen it in the middle of the day or something. And that was like one of the hardest I've ever laughed in a theater. Like we were both crying, it was just like, what is this movie? And that sounds so weird to say, because it's like such a different kind of humor and stuff, but I just never seen anything like it. And it's just like, it cut me, to the core, but it's these theater experiences that you share with people and movies and all that kind of stuff that like, it's got such a great importance. And I think that's, again, not to get all sentimental, but why I'm so glad you're here, Dad, and just like why we're doing this, like getting to share all this stuff and talk about these experiences. It's really cool.
Yeah. I love hearing those stories from you two. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that, Buzz.
Oh, thank you.
It gave me goosebumps. It's really cool because it is really special to me, because it was something I was able to share with my dad that way.
Yeah.
And, it's something I never forgot. And we saw every Mel Brooks movie after that,
Yeah.
But
how could you not?
Yeah. I was actually reading in Mel Brooks' autobiography today and about making this movie, and they were making Blazing Saddles, and he saw Gene writing on a pad, and he said, come on, let's have lunch. What are you writing? And he said, oh, I've got this thing about this doctor who is from the Frankensteins, but he refuses to believe it, but he's really insane, but he doesn't think so. And it's in his blood. And he said, really? He said, yeah. And he says, tell me about it. And they told him more about the movie. And he says, you have any money on you? And he said, $56. He said, what's your thought? What do you want to happen? He says, well, I want you to write it with me, and then I want you to direct it. He said that to Mel Brooks. And Mel said, He said, oh, you have any money on you? He said, yeah, I got $56. He said, give me the $56 as a down payment. I'll work on it. If I like the script, I'll direct it.
Wow.
That's
and
amazing.
They worked on it. It all happened. And then when they cast it, the guy who was Gene Wilder's agent at the time, who became some famous studio, leader, but called Gene and said, I hear you're working on this script. Is there any part in it for Marty Feldman and Peter Boyle? And he said, Mel was there, and he said, why are you asking? He said, well, I don't just represent you. I'm now represent those two. They're new clients of mine. And I was wondering if I can get them a job. And Mel was writing in there. He says, sometimes God looks down on you.
Yeah.
And he said, that was that day. He said, because we were just thinking about what are we going to do for Igor? What will we do? And he said, God looked down on us that day.
That's
Isn't that
awesome.
just magic?
So many of these people feel like they were written for that role. So it's cool to learn that it was just so happened to work out that way.
Yeah.
And Madeline Kahn, they wrote the role for, and Cloris Leachman, Blucher was just, because someone had told him that Blucher was glue in German. He said, which was wrong. But he said that's one reason the horses whinnied every time they said
awesome.
Blucher.
That's so cool.
It was just one of the reasons. But it was funny reading that. But the guy that did the sets for the original 1931 Frankenstein film had all the original parts, many of the original parts, like all the things where the lightning bolts go up.
Yeah.
He had them in his garage.
Oh, wow.
And all the things, most of the things you see in there, all the big things around, those are from the original movie.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Apparently, he wasn't credited in the original Frankenstein. And so Mel Brooks rented that equipment from him, paid him for the equipment, and then credited him as in the credits of this film. So he was able to make cool. Some money off of it and finally get his due for it. I thought that was really cool.
That's awesome. I didn't realize those are same sets.
That's Mel. I mean, Mel is just such a good human being.
Matt, how about you? What was your first experience with this movie?
I guess it's time for another dad story.
Totally.
My dad.
This is a dad movie for sure.
We're a dad podcast.
We're a dad pod.
Yeah, but
working on my dad pod.
It's well documented on here that my dad imposed a lot of his taste and his favorite things on me and my siblings when it comes to pop culture. But I credit my dad for my pop culture savvy. Primarily stuff that was done prior to 1980. But he brought home a lot, like all kinds of old comedies. My dad's a big Marx Brothers guy. And Mel Brooks, he brought home a ton of Mel Brooks, and among his favorites is Young Frankenstein as well. So I grew an affinity for this movie. I actually hadn't seen it since I was a kid, probably.
Oh, wow.
I think I'd held off on it because I wasn't. Sometimes you have you hold something to such high esteem, and then you watch other stuff that you enjoyed as a kid and they don't hold up. And so
right.
I kind of kept this one, on the shelf.
Want to keep the memory of the good.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't want to get disappointed by seeing it again and having it let you down.
Yeah.
And so I had remembered some of the scenes from this fairly well, but I was just thrilled revisiting this again and just seeing how well it holds up. And I can't really speak to this movie without, I guess, talking about so my cousin does improv in LA. And
that's cool.
I think about what she explained to me about why improv is so funny. And I'm not sure how much of this movie was improvised versus written. I'm assuming that there was some improv in there, but mostly written. Yeah. But she was explaining to me what's so funny about improv is when you take, something that is supposed to be taken seriously, but you just put something totally absurd in there, but everyone is acting like it's serious. And that's what makes improv funny. Now, it's not when people are trying to crack jokes and try to make each other laugh. It's really when people are earnestly playing a totally absurd, character. And I'm watching this, and they're filming this, paying homage to the classic horror movies. They're following all the horror beats, but you'd have just this wild Gene Wilder playing probably the most dramatic performance I've ever seen. He shouts 90% of his lines in the movie, and just keeps that wild gaze. And I'm just like, this is, and then you just read what the premise is like. This is the funniest thing I have ever seen or heard of. And it's just crazy how much it holds up. Like, if you're just to read what this movie is about and then watch that first scene where like the first student's like, oh, Mr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Fronkensteen. It's like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
I have one question, Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Fronkensteen.
I think it's a great point of like playing it straight and making it so funny, because he's so mad that this person called him Frankenstein because he's trying to distance himself from that name. Just like, it's Frankenstein. It's like, that's the funniest way that you could choose to say this.
There are few people that can do the crazy eyes better than Gene Wilder.
Is there anybody?
It was brilliant.
Even watching, like, growing up watching Willy Wonka and stuff, I'm like, this guy might genuinely be insane. Like,
even in black and white.
He always kind of scared me.
Wild. Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that movie too. But
same.
It was interesting because I was reading in that book today about how because they had 2.5 weeks of rehearsals before they went and started filming. Because Mel said it allowed them to get comfortable with the scripting, get comfortable with each other, which I think is brilliant. But the thing I liked about that was he said when he sat everybody down at the very first reading of the script, he said, now, the important thing here, and he said he repeated it a couple times, is this is a broad comedy. It's a hilarious comedy. But every single one of you, this is deadly serious. You never, every one of you who your characters, this is deadly serious. There's nothing funny to any of you in this. You never play to the camera. You never play to the audience, because this is life and death to you.
Love that.
And that's the thing that makes it broad comedy and makes it funny. But I've acted a lot in my life. And that's the thing, is if you're acting well, you have to play it. The comedy will come off on its own. But you have to live in your own world. And then they play off the comedy. They see the comedy in that. But if you go to the audience like wink, wink, it takes that away from them. And you lose the whole whatever's funny in it.
Yeah, that's true. I think the only person that kind of does this throughout the movie is Marty Feldman.
Oh,
but I think it's like it's played for that role, and the fact that it's only one person out of this and not the whole cast. Like
I think it's like by design. It's kind of like,
you take the blonde, I'll take the one in the toilet.
Oh my, that's like my favorite line of the whole movie. I think it's so funny, or when she shows up, he's like, my love, like, and then Marty Feldman does it while he goes to walk away, like.
Surprise?
Yes.
Love me?
Well,
let's turn in.
Oh.
Darling!
Yes.
Say nothing, act casual.
Ready?
Yes.
He's fantastic, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about him later on. But
my God,
I
love Marty Feldman.
He was wonderful. This was, this would be on the Marty Feldman Rushmore without a doubt. This has got to be one of his best ever. So,
oh God, yeah.
But we just kind of mentioned Willy Wonka. Both these guys, there's two heavy hitters. There's a lot of great people. Madeline Kahn, obviously, of Mixed Nuts fame here on the pod. We love Madeline Kahn. Everyone in here is great. This is when I learned that, Ray Romano's dad did more than just that. I was like, oh, this was Frankenstein. Okay, cool. Like, I didn't put that together at the time. So, plenty of great people here, but I do think without a doubt, the big two we get are Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder. Like, this is their movie, or these two guys. So I'm kind of curious, Dad, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I'd like to talk about these two guys briefly. Just, do you remember what your first Mel Brooks movie was? And in regards to Gene Wilder, I'm kind of curious, what role you remember him for. Like, is it this? Is it, Frankenstein? Is there something else? I think, we all have a different thing that we think about when it comes to Gene Wilder. So yeah, I just kind of want to talk about those
There's so
two
many
things.
roles for Gene Wilder that I remember.
Yeah.
But I think this was the first one. I'd seen him in The Producers.
Okay.
And I think The Producers was my very first Mel Brooks film.
Oh, okay.
But I was younger. So it was a funny, good movie. And Zero Mostel played him so broad, the Bialystock, so broad. And it was a funny movie. But this is the one that just sort of focused me down on Mel Brooks and had me going, because I'm trying to think. And I'm saying that I saw Blazing Saddles first. I actually saw this first with my dad. Then I saw Blazing Saddles.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I saw them in reverse order.
That makes sense.
So this was the first one where Gene Wilder was like the leading man. This is his first real leading man type role.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I think he's brilliant in this.
Oh, he's so good. Yeah. This has got to be one of his
surprised
best.
me that this was his first leading man role, because he is so good at it. You would think he's been doing this for a while.
But I think the Gene Wilder role that stands out to me is Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
It's magic.
Yeah.
It's magic, because when I was a kid, those books were magic to me. They were part of my escape. I read Willy Wonka and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, the sequel.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I read those over and over and over. I loved those books.
Yeah, he was perfect for that. Matt, what about you? Do you remember your first Mel Brooks and, what are your thoughts on Gene Wilder?
So I got a big chunk of it. I don't really remember most of them. The ones I remember the most are Spaceballs, Robin Hood, Young Frankenstein, Producers. I saw High Anxiety. I remember really loving it, but when I was looking it up, I don't remember much about it. I'm just reading the plot of it. But
that is Hitchcock satire, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And so I remember liking that one a lot. I don't remember a lot from it, so I'd probably need to watch that again. But Spaceballs is the one I think that I first saw, and spent my childhood quoting it. It's just got so much great stuff in it. And then Gene Wilder, yeah, I'm totally Wonka with Wilder.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, as Tyler was sort of saying, like Gene Wilder just like dominate. His presence is so dominating in this movie that this might take over my favorite Gene Wilder movie. I don't know, but right now it's Wonka.
Yeah, it's hard to top that without a doubt.
Yeah, I think honestly, my favorite Gene Wilder performance might be Young Frankenstein, and that's also my first introduction to Mel Brooks. I may have seen Spaceballs first, but when I knew I was watching a Mel Brooks movie when I watched Young Frankenstein, because my grandfather told me so. He's like, "This is Mel Brooks. This is Gene Wilder, this is Young Frankenstein," so on and so forth. And so I'd have to go with Young Frankenstein for my first Mel Brooks experience. Despite me thinking this might be Gene Wilder's best performance that I've seen, I still think of Willy Wonka. It's just so burned into my mind. I mean, for all the reasons that everyone would expect, when I think of Gene Wilder, I think of Willy Wonka, and it's like, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Gene Wilder seems to have that that wild man, the touch of the energy, wild man, the touch of the insane almost. I don't know Gene Wilder at all, but for some reason he just seems to embody Willy Wonka, right? Like it doesn't seem to be much of a stretch that he could actually be Willy Wonka. Like he just has those crazy eyes, you know what I mean? So I just think they're like two sides of the same coin or something,
For sure.
For me, I'll always think of Willy Wonka when I think of Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
How about you, Ben?
I mean, I think I probably have to echo that, in my heart. Willy Wonka is just like the first thing I think of. I did want to use this as an opportunity, though, to talk about See No Evil, Hear No Evil, which he did with Richard Pryor. I mean, they did a few movies together, things like that.
My God, their movies are brilliant.
They're so good. And Willy Wonka is it's what everyone's going to know him for. And that's totally understandable. But I guess I would just want to shout out See No Evil, Hear No Evil for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's a wonderful movie. In it, let's see, Richard Pryor is deaf and No, Richard Pryor is blind and Gene Hackman is deaf. And they are both at the scene of a crime, but obviously they both only have like half of the story kind of thing. And it just got some of the most hilarious scenes ever. You know, Gene Wilder just asking him, like, you really can't hear anything. He's like, I don't know, let's try. And he just yells as loud as he can in his ears.
I want you to hear me, okay? Shazam! Can you hear me? Oh. What? Wally! What? Wally! What? Jesus! I heard something! Yes! I heard your voice! You heard me! Wally! Oh. I heard your voice! You can hear me, Dave! What? You can hear me!
No, I'm fucking deaf. I can't do anything, you know, like just like both of their like chemistry together is
those two were magic together.
They really were. And I think Stir Crazy is like obviously like maybe the more recognized, the more well-known one, but I love See No Evil, Hear No Evil so much. So definitely shout that out. And if you're listening and somehow haven't seen Willy Wonka, obviously like that's Gene Wilder without a doubt.
I love that you saw.
I hear Stir Crazy and I think of that chicken suit.
It's so good. I love it. What are you gonna say, Tyler?
Sorry, Tyler.
Oh no, it's not important. You saw Young Frankenstein, Ben. You saw it at Broovies, and I saw See No Evil, Hear No Evil at Broovies.
Oh, really?
In a similar situation. Yeah, they'll occasionally do, free showings of stuff, and that's when I saw it. Similar,
if you want,
there's a lot of people there that were into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it made it a lot of fun.
We're open for sponsorship, Broovies. If you want to hit us up, let us know.
Yeah, if there's one place I want a sponsorship from, it's Broovies.
I did drop off like a stack of our stickers there. I was like, this is the perfect place for this. So
nice. Cool. Hell yeah.
You should talk to them about getting a sponsorship, and then you could do the podcast at Ruby's.
Oh my God.
And then invite everybody to come to Ruby's.
Leo, have you been watching my dreams?
Movie. No, I mean, go out and talk to them. Send them this podcast.
That'd be amazing. That place is perfect. And then, my first one that I saw that I remember anyway is Robin Hood Men in Tights. I just moved to Utah as one of my first birthday sleepovers, and someone put it on again, to tell you all how far back Andrew and I go. Like, I know he was there at least, and it may have been for his birthday. I've known him for such a long time. And I just remember watching that movie, and I'm someone who the Disney Robin Hood is still probably my favorite of all time. Right there with, Peter Pan. I love the Kevin Costner movie. Like I love Robin Hood. And then I watched this movie and I don't think I really understood like what a satire was. I was 10. I don't know what I was really exposed to. And so I'm watching this and, he's like pulling up an arrow, then like it just rolls down into 6 of them, or Maid Marian metal chastity belt. I was like, wait, I feel like they're making fun of it, but like in a nice kind of way. You know what I mean? Like they're not
in
like
a nice way.
Why am I laughing at this?
Yeah, it's like they're in on the joke. Like, is this a thing that you can do? Like you can make fun of something and be in on, like, I don't know. It was such a weird feeling. But like I loved that movie. My intro to Dave Chappelle, without a doubt. I'm pretty sure my intro to Carrie Elwes as well, because I don't think I saw Princess Bride for quite a while. So, but I love that movie, and even that one kind of gives a nod, to Blazing Saddles at the end. So I like, how there is like a little bit of, there's a lot of fourth wall breaking in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
A black sheriff? He's black? And why not? It worked in Blazing Saddles.
Yeah,
that was definitely my first Mel Brooks, and I think that just opened it up to like, okay, what else did this guy do? And I think that maybe where Spaceballs came in next, which is still, shout out Rick Moranis. If you're listening, come on the pod, Rick. Like it's
Rick. Still Pullman.
Yeah, please. We've been jammed. Like, oh, I love that movie. Yeah, at the risk of this becoming a quote-a-thon, I think I want to get into our elevator pitch.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
So this segment is if you are in an elevator with someone and, you have a few floors to sell them on the movie that we're going to be talking about. Pull out your phone, got YouTube, get to pick your favorite clip. What are you showing people from Young Frankenstein that haven't seen it before to sell them on the movie, to get them to watch it?
I would show when Dr. Fronkensteen gets off the train and meets Igor on the train platform.
Yeah.
Because I think that scene perfectly encapsulates the type of humor you're going to get. It sets up a lot of the running jokes that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's one of those moments in the movie where, you know, it's the atmosphere with the fog and everything, and it's Transylvania, and it's sort of like that mix of like kind of spooky. Like you could show it to someone and they might think they're in for a horror movie. So I think if you're like pulling up a clip on your phone, they think they're in for one thing, and then they get this absolutely absurd interaction between he and Igor. The Walk This Way bit, which apparently influenced the Aerosmith song Walk This Way.
Oh, really?
Steven Tyler. Apparently, I read this in the IMDb trivia. So
that's awesome.
But he saw the movie and then he went and wrote the song Walk This Way because of this movie. So
walk this way. This way.
I think I would show that scene. This sort of is, we talk about this a lot. It's a dartboard movie, right? Like you can show pretty much any scene here, but I personally don't like to show scenes that are too spoilery. And I feel like this sets you up for exactly what you're going to get out of this movie. You'll know exactly what to expect after watching that scene.
Did you pronounce it Friedrich? Like, no. So good. I love that.
Oh man, that's a great pick, Tyler. All right, so
thank you.
One thing that I was struck by this movie was obviously like there's tons of hilarious scenes in this, but like I really loved the shots that they did in this movie, and like
it looks really cool.
Black and white is a really fun medium to play in, and with the horror movies that they're paying homage to, I felt like they just had a ton of cool stuff that they did with this movie. And so one thing that both played on the comedy and like the shots that I just loved, that I was just kind of awestruck with was when he's about to revive the creature, and Igor and the assistant are there, and they're winding the thing to raise up the creature to the roof. And Gene Wilder is just on this crazy monologue. And like it's switching shots to like his shadow on the wall as he's being raised, like lightning is striking, and like his just wild eyes, and he's like shouting. I'm like, this is just a master performance right here. This monologue. And then like we're somewhat familiar with those monologues because it's like over dramatized. Like we've seen that before in other things, but like if you just like listen to what he's saying and just like how absurd and over the top it is, it's just like so funny. And so that's the one that I'd pull out on my phone to show someone.
Totally.
And it's really, I mean, it's just him, but like even his hair is perfect for this role. Like it's just as like chaotic and like wild,
kind of combed over, but like
like doesn't need, but it's awesome.
One of my favorite things to do when I'm watching a movie for the podcast is try to pick out what Matt's elevator scene is going to be.
Oh, nice.
Because you love to pick the scenes that are you've never seen this in a movie before.
I have a taste for the bizarre. Yeah.
And one thing I like about your pick here is we've seen this scene before. We've seen the mad scientist scene before, but there's just like the unique way that Gene Wilder can do this, and the unique way that this movie does this is perfect. So I love that you're always true to your brand, even when you like go
even when I sell out
a little bit. Yeah, you're always true to yourself. I love it.
A sincere sellout.
The one I love, there's a couple I love, but I think when they find the cigar in the room and they've gone down there, you know, it's like, lift the candlestick, put it back, you know, and they get into the room. And they've heard the violin music, and they finally get down there. Yeah, and he turns on Frau Blucher, and she, you know, that whole scene going in there, and they find the book and they find all the papers, and then she comes in and he says, "It was you, yes, you know, it was your cigar, yes, it was, you knew him, yes, say it, he was my boyfriend." I mean, that whole scene is just brilliant. The way they lit it, the way they showed everything, I love that. You know,
it's so good. Yeah,
love it.
That scene leading into it, the bookcase, you know, put the candle back. It's just
put the candle back.
Put the candle back.
think I have it figured out now.
That was one of my favorites. That was my runner up, but my favorite scene here, I mean, it is, in a sense, it's a spoiler, but I think in any Frankenstein movie, the creature gets, comes to life and all that kind of stuff. So I love the spin on it that they do here with putting on the Ritz. It's just one of my favorite scenes of all time ever, in anything. Because when they first introduce him and he's walking out slow and it's like, oh, that's basic, balance and all that kind of stuff. It's like, now we're going to show you something even more. And then all of a sudden, they're in tuxes and they start singing on the Ritz and
you're uptown
guy. It's so good. And then they cut to him and it's like, so it's just like him yelling out, putting on the Ritz. Just so good.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits?
Not in beat, not in tune, nothing, but it's like, oh, I love that scene so much. I was just laughing, crying again, in Improvies, watching with other people. It's just a great experience. But I love that scene a lot, just for a lot of reasons. Again, it's almost like the mad scientist thing. We've seen them, release. It reminded me kind of King Kong. It's like we bring in the beast, we show him to a crowd, and then obviously something goes wrong. That kind of a thing. And this was just a different version of it. And then, the light explodes and all that kind of stuff. But putting on the Ritz is just one of the best.
When I said earlier that watching this movie now, I get different jokes. That's one joke in particular that I didn't understand when I was young. I thought it was funny just because the monster's singing and dancing when I was a kid, right? And that is funny. But what you're saying is it's a spin on the demonstration of the monster's capabilities, right?
Yeah.
And the joke really landed for me again tonight. The putting on the Ritz thing, I was looking forward to it the whole movie because I knew it was coming, but it really landed with me in a way that I wasn't expecting this time. It's like, oh wait, that's what that joke is doing. I get it now. And it's just so hilarious. It's
absurd. I love it.
Yeah.
My backup was the, did you get so-and-so's brain, Professor so-and-so? Not exactly. Well, whose brain did you get? Abby someone. Abby who? Abby Normal. Abby Normal. What? I love that whole scene.
And you won't be mad.
Yeah.
I won't be mad. I won't be mad. I won't be mad at all. You got me an abnormal brain.
Oh man, so good.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, honestly, again, I said it's a dartboard movie. We could probably talk about every scene from this movie. Sure. They're all hilarious.
Well, the whole movie. It's like, well, if monster got part of your brain, what did you get?
Oh yeah. There's so much payoff, in all these jokes. Like you talked about, Tyler, at the train station, and it just goes on throughout. And
there's a part of me that thinks that this movie was written specifically for that final joke.
Yeah,
it had to be.
They're just trying to tell the longest dick joke in history.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And even you talked to that about Kenneth Mars, the Inspector Kemp, and his arm, and that whole physical comedy is also there when they go in for the demonstration. The other guy has to knock his arm down because it's in his way. And then when he gets so riled up that his accent becomes unintelligible, and everyone's like, what? And then he's like, oh, okay, it's this, oh, okay. I got
and when he wants to light a cigar, he puts his hand in the fireplace and lights it.
Exactly. Oh man, just everything about this movie. I love it so much. I'm really glad that we revisited it.
So many
Yeah, I mean, along with these great moments, obviously a lot of it comes from the cast that Mel Brooks put together. So I think it's time for us to jump to our Apollonia Award, or our Lee Van Cleef Award. We're figuring out what we're going to call it, but essentially this is, broken down to its simplest terms, the best supporting actor in the movie. This came about after season 1 when we watched Purple Rain, and Tyler brought up, Apollonia just kind of just outlives that movie, so to speak. It's the thing you think about, Obviously there's Prince and the soundtrack and all that, but Apollonia just exists because of this. And so we want to talk about our favorite supporting actors in this movie. So outside of Gene Wilder, who would you pick? Who was the star for you? And let's see, Tyler, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. And this is actually, so I had a revelation because of this award and because of this movie. When we watched, I forget which one it is at the moment, but the Fistful round, the Fistful of Dollars round. There is one movie where he visits an old prospector in a shack by the train station.
Yeah.
And I talked about that I'm a sucker for that trope, that character, the strange person in a strange house, whatever. And I think that I fell in love with that trope because of this movie and because of Gene Hackman and The Blind Man. And it really like hit me as I was, preparing to do this episode, and I was thinking about things. I'm like, wait a minute. That's where this comes from. That's where I like this so much, is because of, I really do think it's because of this scene with Gene Hackman, the blind man in the shack when he hangs out with the monster. And so that was like, it was like a lightning bolt, like it's like, holy shit. I just figured something out about myself. And so that's what I would go with. I'm going to go with Gene Hackman, the blind man in the shack, praying to God for some companionship. Nice. And boy, does he get it. I mean, it's a really fun scene, but for me, I think it just was like, I just liked that I learned something about myself.
Yeah.
and it's Gene Hackman. Like, that's insane. Like,
it's
Gene
crazy.
Hackman is just doing this little bit role, and it's so fun.
It's so nuts.
Yeah.
Matt, how about you? Who's your Apollonia winner?
I'm going to resist making a Tyler pick, and I'm not going to choose the castle.
Oh, you got to.
Just like Helm's Deep.
Not going to choose
Helm's Deep. The castle.
So in our Two Towers episode, I chose Helm's Deep as my favorite supporting actor.
Okay.
Famous actor Helm's Deep.
Because when you think of the Two Towers, tell me you don't think about Helm's Deep.
I mean, it's true. It's a fair point.
It's true.
I gotta go. I mean,
lines. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. As Ben noted earlier, I'm a big Mixed Nuts guy. Mixed Nuts is my unsung gem. I have to go with my girl Madeline Kahn.
Yeah,
nice.
I love her, and
I feel like
love
you'd
her
have
and
been
everything.
Kicked off the pod if you didn't pick.
I had to pick. I would have been. And if you guys had kicked me off, the fans would have come on and made sure that I didn't record another episode. So
really, when she's like, "Tap it, darling, tap it," and he whispers it in her ear, "No, the dress. It's tap it. It's gonna wrinkle."
That their intro scene of him leaving on the train is just
my God,
fantastic.
He's spitting out her hair. Just come on.
And I think she's up there with Gene Hackman as far as like doing the most with the least amount of screen time. Like she really makes everything work, because we really just put her at the beginning and end, but she leaves her mark in this movie, which is fantastic.
I agree completely. I mean, she sets it up very beautifully in the beginning.
Yeah,
it's I think for best supporting actress, if you're looking at it that level, as far as. Because when you said that in the beginning, I thought, it's got to be Marty Feldman. But I see where you're going with this. Then I think it has to be the patient in the opening scene.
Oh, okay.
The very opening scene with the clip on the neck. Give him an extra buck. It's got to be that guy. I love that guy. Yeah. He's the one that made the biggest impression on me when I first saw it. I love that scene.
Yeah.
So it's got to be him.
I think that's a great pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ride those coattails that you were mentioning, Dad. And I mean, I do think Marty Feldman is probably up there, as far as my pick. As we talked about, he is like the one person that's given the comic relief in the comic. Like, he's allowed to play it funny, where everyone else is playing it so serious. But I think that's kind of just what makes this movie so magic, is his fourth wall breaking, is his the hump moving spots, you take the blonde, I'll take the one in the turban, like all that kind of stuff is so good.
His hump line was not in the script.
Oh, really? Yeah.
When Gene Hackman, that was a whole thing with Gene Hackman about, I'm a brilliant surgeon, I could remove your hump, and him looking at him going, what hump? That wasn't in the script. That was completely. And Mel Brooks, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just read this, and I think this is worth it, because they said they couldn't get through scenes being filmed because he was filming them 3 and 4 times because the crew would break up too much. So he went out and he bought 100 white handkerchiefs and he handed out to everybody in the crew. And he said, stuff these in your mouth. I can't afford for you to laugh.
That's awesome.
And here I was after doing all that. I hadn't saved one for myself. And then when they did this scene, I was blurting. He said,
That's amazing.
I didn't expect that. And I'm like, he said, I almost blew it. But
that's so funny.
When Marvin Feldman just looked at him and went, what hump? I was done.
It's such a good scene. Yeah, they played off each other so well. So yeah, I think.
Well, apparently the hump moving was improv by Feldman as well.
Oh, really?
Exactly.
He just was doing it as a prank. Like he's like, I'll just see if anyone notices. And it took a few days of shooting, and then finally some of the crew was like, "Wasn't your hump supposed to be on that side?" And they just kept it in the movie. I love stuff like that.
I think they did that too in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Like I think. They moved the mole around. The mole is like moving around the whole time, which is kind of funny too. So
that's what he said. Every scene he was in, the mole had moved.
That's awesome.
In the book, he said every scene he was in, they moved the mole.
That's so good. But, I love that.
I think if we're going up to that level of supporting actor, Marty Feldman steals the movie. So
he's got to.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
it has to be.
He's great. But honestly, again, like all of them, like Cloris Leachman was just amazing in this, and then obviously Terry Garr as our intro to her, a roll in the hay, that's something else when you realize what kind of humor we're getting here. It's like, okay, cool. Like, what knockers? Oh, thank you. It's so good.
Well, I love when Madeline Kahn shows up and she goes, what exactly is it that you do? Oh, I don't know. I help with the experiments. And Gene Hackman's like, that was just like,
so good. I love this movie so much. I think let's wrap this up here. Let's go into our Rushmore Mountain.
These are OR scrubs.
Oh, are they?
We are going to do Mel Brooks for this Rushmore, which I'm excited about. So we're each going to pick one Mel Brooks film, whether he was, a writer, producer, director, anything like that. We're going to pick that and compile our 4 top Mel Brooks projects. So I'm excited to see if Young Frankenstein makes it or what will make it.
I have to say this film, because I think he was at the height of his career and his talents at this movie, because he had the cast, he had a great script, and everyone gelled. And the message of the movie was there. And it was the funniest thing I think he ever did. And I love this film. It's my personal favorite.
Cool. I think
absolutely. I mean, in all honesty, this movie would be my pick as well. But since Rushmore has 4 faces on it, we have to pick 4 movies. I'm going to go with Men in Tights. No, that's okay. I mean, to be quite honest, there's 3 movies that I was thinking of. I think Young Frankenstein would be my pick. But Men in Tights is a movie that I sort of discovered on my own. It's like one of those movies. It's like I came across on my own. Like how I don't remember exactly how I came across it. And it's been, one of my little personal favorites. Again, that's where I discovered Dave Chappelle. I knew Cary Elwes. How do you say that? Is that how you say it?
I think so. Cary Elwes. Yeah.
Elwes. I knew of him from, The Princess Bride. So that was one moment. That was one of the first moments that I could remember being like, hey, that's the guy that did the thing and the other thing. Like it was one of those, the first times that I started to recognize the peek behind the curtain, right? That moment where you're like, oh, this guy was this person in this thing. This woman was this. Anyways. So I'll go with Men in Tights because it was like a little personal discovery of mine. I think it was on like HBO or something one day. And I think Ben, a similar experience like you, I was like, oh, I like Robin Hood. Let's see what this is all about. And it kind of blew my mind, the type of humor, and the chastity belt as a concept kind of blew my mind when I was a young man. I was like, wait, like, that's, I don't know. Just so I'll go with Men in Tights. I think there's other movies that might deserve it more, but I'll say Men in Tights.
Cool.
No, Men in Tights is a great pick. Yeah, I love that movie.
There are some classics that I could have said, but For me,
and maybe
maybe
we'll hear about it. Some of the classics we leave off, maybe we'll hear about it from people, but
yeah,
got to follow our hearts, you know?
Yeah,
that's right. So I'm a big Star Wars guy, and I got into Star Wars probably in tandem of discovering Spaceballs. So I kind of absorbed it all at the same time.
Right.
So it was kind of fun to like get into like this universe, but also see a spoof in real time.
Right.
And I mean, I loved it. I love, you know, John Candy, Bill Pullman, Mel Brooks himself plays, you know, three or four roles in it. Like,
yes,
it's just such a funny movie. Yeah. I've just always loved it. And just the idea of, I mean, those characters, it has some of the best lines, like one-liners in it as well.
Totally.
Yeah, I just really love Spaceballs.
Michael Winslow, you know, Joan Rivers, like this cast is
Joan Rivers,
amazing.
When you talk about one-liners, Spaceballs is like the Mike Tyson of one-liners. You know what I mean?
It's like all
it's just
one-liners.
It's punch after punch after punch after punch. I
love it. For my pick, I'm gonna cheat here, and I'm not gonna pick a movie. I'm actually going with a TV show here, which we normally don't talk about, but I have to go with Get Smart.
I'm proud of you. I am so proud of you.
This was it's created by Mel Brooks. It's just one of my favorite TV shows growing up. I was a big fan of the whole Nick at Night, you know, era, all that kind of stuff that we got to see. Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke, all that. And I feel like Get Smart was the same time frame. Seeing Don Adams as Maxwell Smart in Agent 99. This show was hilarious to me. The shoe phone, you know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff. All played so well. Obviously they did a movie of it with Steve Carell. And you know, one of my crush more is Anne Hathaway was in it as well. I think Steve Carell was good for that role, but it's just nothing was going to be like that TV show. So I'm going to cheat and not pick a movie. I'm going to go with the TV show, and Get Smart is going to take my place on the Rushmore. But I think, those are some great picks. We're probably going to hear from people about Blazing Saddles, but you know, it's going to happen. You know, we got to, like I said, be true to ourselves. So
that was the classic that I was talking about. But I'll, you know, in a moment of honesty here, I've actually never seen Blazing Saddles.
Okay.
I was in a room when it was playing. So I was working. My parents were visiting. It's when I lived in Austin, and they were watching it while I was doing my work. And Leo, like you said, they couldn't make this movie now, because I turned to them. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys watching? Like, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's Blazing Saddles. And then I was like, oh, okay. Like the context really helped. I'm like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
That's fine. Carry on. You know, like we don't have to have a talk.
Really sit down and watch that movie, because it is hilarious. And the whole movie from the beginning all the way through the credits, or through until the credits, because it's just, and you know who was a kicker in that movie that really surprised me was Harvey Korman.
Oh yeah.
He was brilliant in that film.
I love Harvey Korman.
He really was.
Well, I'm due. I've been due to watch that for a while.
I just want to watch the Carol Burnett show.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great Rushmore. I think between the four of those, those are perfect choices. Dad, thank you so much for being here. This lived up to all the hype I had built up in myself. This was so much fun. I'm glad that you came on. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, seriously. Thanks for coming.
I had an amazing time. Thank you all for having me.
Me too.
I mean,
what a pleasure.
You guys are great. You're warm, you're friendly, and I had a blast, and you're funny. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I can't wait to come back.
Yeah, we'll have you back for sure.
Absolutely.
We won't wait
Vegas trip so we can do it all in person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about recording in person. Let's do that.
Wouldn't that be nice?
You don't have to twist my arm to go to Vegas. Just let me know. There's golf and gambling. Golf, gambling, and Leo. It's all I need.
Yeah.
We'll plan it. You got it.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you again.
Yeah,
for coming. This was awesome. Thank you everyone for listening and supporting us. Again, you can find us anywhere at 3 Films Pod. Stay tuned. Next month we are digging into legacy sequels. With Wakanda Forever coming out, we thought sequels might be a good idea, so we're doing the legacy one. So we're getting another month of Tom Cruise. I got to keep my theme going, so we're gonna be kicking it off there.
Long live Tom.
Yeah, chalk up your billiard cues, and let's hang out with Tom Cruise. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Dressed up like $1 million trooper, trying mighty hard to look like Gary Cooper. Come, let's mix where Rockefellers walk with sticks or umbrellas in their midst.